So we're up to the beginning of Chaf Beis Amid Aleph, the words of Tana Kama. Just to review, the Gemara brought down a three-way brisa. Now the purpose of this brisa is because the Tana Kama of the brisa and Rav Elazar Shimon argue, an afkamina that comes out of the brisa is how much do you have to cut when you're doing the malika ba'olah sa'oif? According to the Rabbanan, 2 full pipes. According to Rav Elazar Shimon, roiv. But the way they got into that is because the pasuk describes the oilas ha'oif as kamishpat. You should do it kamishpat. So what does it mean kamishpat? It means it should be done like something else. So Tana Kama says it can't be like the chatas ha'oif because the pasuk says veikriva, which means they're not the same. So rather, it must be referring to the chatas behema, meaning, and just like the chatas behema has certain halachas, it's bamin achulin, it's bayoim, biyadu yumanis, so to the oilas ha'oif as well. Then the Gemara says, well, if it's like a chatas behema, then chatas behema is just roiv of the 2 pipes, so maybe oilas ha'oif should also only be roiv. How do I know you cut 2 fully? Because it says v'hikter u'malak. That means the malika has to be like the burning. Just like the burning is the head alone, so to the malika is the head alone. Completely severed. So says the Gemara of Tana Kama, according to Tana Kama, v'chimiachar denafkalon u'malak v'hikter. Once you have the drasha of malak v'hikter, which means that the malika has to be of the oilas ha'oif, completely to sever the head, meaning the same way it's burnt entirely on its own, so too the malika has to sever the head, not like the chatas ha'oif, then v'hikrivu lamali. Then what do you need v'hikrivu for? Meaning we start off by saying that the only way I know that the pasuk differentiates between oilas ha'oif and chatas ha'oif is from v'hikrivu. V'hikrivu means that they're not the same. But you don't need that, because umalak v'hikter tells me they're not the same, because the chatas ha'oif you just cut 1 pipe, umalak v'hikter tells you the malika has to be a severance, which is 2 pipes. So you basically have 2 drashas telling you that they're not the same. The krivu tells you not the same, and malak v'hikter by definition tells you it's not the same, because that we're darshaning that the malika has to be like the haktara, just like the haktara is the entire head, so the malika is the entire head, which means you're cutting both pipes. So you have 2 drashas telling me I'm cutting both pipes. Meaning, you have 2 drashas telling me the chatas ha'oif and oilas ha'oif are not the same. One is telling me that they're different, one is telling me you cut both pipes, which by the chatas ha'oif you only do 1 pipe. So you have 2 drashas telling me they're not the same. So what do you need this for? So Gemara says, I'll tell you why you need this for. Ila v'hikrivu. If you didn't have a hikrivu, hava amina, I would actually say kamishpat is kamishpat chatas ha'oif. If not for the word v'hikrivu, I would actually say the chatas ha'oif and oilas ha'oif are both the same. You only do 1 pipe. I thought it says malak v'hikter, which means we said that the malika has to be like the haktara. In what way? Just like the haktara is you burn the head without the body, so the malika has to cut the head off without the body. The Gemara says, I would have said differently. I would have said, if not for hikrivu, that really chatas ha'oif and oilas ha'oif are the same. V'yimishu malak v'hikter, and I would have darshan malak v'hikter differently. How would I have darshaned it? I would not have darshaned it that you have to sever the entire head with the malika. I would say, hava amina, ma haktara b'roisha shel mizbeach, af malika b'roisha shel mizbeach. I would not say that the drasha is telling me how much to cut, but rather I would tell you it's telling you where it must be done. Just like the burning is at the top of the mizbeach, so to the malika has to be at the top of the mizbeach. That's what I would have said. Hasha d'chsiv rachman v'hikrivu. Now that the pasuk says v'hikrivu, which means that they're not the same, darish beinami ha. So I'll make the following drasha. Meaning once the pasuk tells me they're not the same, then malak v'hikter tells me that you cut off 2 pipes. Meaning it's like, oh, what do you need both for? Because if I didn't have v'hikrivu, I would darshan the second one differently. It's dafko 2 together. V'hikrivu means that they're not the same. That allows me to darshan malak v'hikter that you're supposed to sever both pipes. Now we said that in what way, according to Tana Kama, is the oilas ha'oif like the chatas behema? So we said just like the chatas behema cannot be bought with meiser money, and it has to be done during the day, and it has to be done with the right hand. So to the oilas ha'oif, those 3 drashas are learned out from the chatas behema. So the Gemara says chatas behema deina balam and chulin minolet. How do you taka know that the chatas behema does not come from chulin? How do you know that taka? Meaning you're making a presumption that the chatas behema does not come from chulin. Must come from chulin, not from meiser. How do you know this? So the Gemara says, Amar of Chizad Amar Kra, because the pasuk says regarding Aaron HaKoyin, Ikriv Aaron is para chatas ashaloi. It says that Aaron brings his chatas, implying mishaloi that he has to pay for himself. V'loi mishal tzibar, v'loi mishal meiser. The chatas of Aaron cannot come from communal funds, and it cannot come from meiser. So you see that a chatas has to come from chulin, not from meiser. Okay. The second thing that we learn out from the oilas ha'oif from chatas behema is just like the chatas behemas during the day, so too oilas ha'oif as well. The problem is there's a different drasha to tell me that oilas ha'oif has to be done during the day, not from chatas behema. Beyom tzavaso nafka. Isn't it learned out from beyom tzavaso that all karbanos have to be brought during the day? that applies to all karbanos, not just from chatas behema. So the answer is kedei nizba. So you're right. Biyom is not; it shouldn't be there. Take it out. Now the last thing that we compare the oilas ha'oif to the chatas behema is just like chatas behema the right hand, so the oilas ha'oif is the right hand. The question is, what do I need this for? There's a rule that anytime it says the word kayin or etzba, either one, it means the right hand, and it says regarding the oilas ha'oif kayin. So what do I need? What do I need to learn out from chatas behema? It says the word kayin. That should be enough. Yada imanis mid Rabbi Chana nafka. Don't we learn out from Rabbi Chana? Dam Rabbi Chana Rav Shimon Lakish. Kamakom shenemar etzba kahuna. Anytime the pasuk says either etzba or kahuna, ein el yamin, either one is a code word for the right hand. And regarding olas ha'of, it says kohen. So the Gemara says, I'll tell you why. Is v'idach, the other opinion, who learns it out from chatas behema, tells you that no, it's not that either or. You need the word etzba. Kahuna by etzba, etzba lekuna. It's etzba that's the main thing. And because olas ha'of does not have the word etzba, I don't know it's the right hand, if not for the fact that it's learned out from chatas behema. Now, the next Tana in that brisa was Rav Shimon, and Rav Shimon said that the pasuk is comparing kamishpad is the olas ha'of is like the chatas ha'of. In what way? It's telling you the location. Just like the chatas ha'of, you do malika at the back of the neck, so to olas ha'of as well. That's his drasha. V'tanakam Rav Rav Shimon, the other two Tanoim, mimul ha'erev minolu. How do they know that the malika is done at the back of the neck? So the Gemara says, because they don't have that drasha, the answer is Gamre Malika Mimalika. They have a Gzera Shava, that it says Umalak by the Chatas ha'of, it says Umalak by the Olas ha'of, just like the Chatas ha'of, it's the back of the neck, so to the Olas ha'of is the back of the neck as well. All right, the next Mishnah deals with the bird karbanos in general. Now the two types of karbanos is called Bnei Yona and Torim. Bnei Yona are turtle doves, and Torin are pigeons. Now, the halacha is, opposite. Bnei Yona are pigeons, and Torin are turtle doves. The halacha is that a pigeon has to be young, and it has to be young because it's Bnei Yona, and Torin have to be mature. They have to be old. It doesn't say the exact age, but it's basically a maturity level. So one type of bird, so basically the Torin have to be old, the Bnei Yona have to be young. If you bring a Bnei Yona when it's old, you're not Yotza, and if you bring a Torin when it's young, you're not Yotza. So the ages are not the same. So the Gemara says, the Mishnah says, kosher b'Torin, pasul Bnei Yona. What's kosher for a Torin is pasul for Bnei Yona, and vice versa. Kosher Bnei Yona, pasul b'Torin. Tchilas atziuv. Now, apparently these birds, they have young birds, then you have mature birds, and apparently as they're maturing, when they're in between, they're in that adolescent stage where they're sort of like the teenage stage, they have yellow feathers. Now, that stage, says the Mishnah, Tchilas Atziyuv Bazeh Bazeh Pasul. That stage is pasul for both, because it's neither young nor old. Okay. Zak the Gemara just speaks it out. Tan Rabbanan Tayrin Gedoylin Ksherim. Turtle doves have to be mature. Ketanim Psulin, but when they're young, they're pasul. Bnei Yona pigeons are the opposite. Ketanim Ksherim Gedolim Psulim. They have to be young, they can't be old. Nimtza kosher b'Torah and pasul Bnei Yona, kosher Bnei Yona, pasul b'Torah. What's kosher for one is pasul for the other, and vice versa. Now, how do you see this? How do you know that Bnei Yona means young and Torah means old? How do you know this? So the Gemara says, Tan Rabbanan, Torim, Gedolim, V'lo Ketanim. Turtle doves have to be old and not young, and if they're young, they're not Yotza. Says the Gemara, what's the Chiddush? Shiyachav Dinhu, go to the next page, because you might argue as follows. I'll make the following Kal V'chomer. Bnei Yona shelo huchsher b'gedolim. If pigeons have to be young, and they're not kosher when they're old, but huchsher b'ketanim, but they're kosher when they're young, meaning if pigeons are kosher young and not old, then Torin, the turtle doves, which are kosher old, Kal V'chomer, they should be kosher young. In other words, how do I know that Torim have to be old dafka? Tamalom Torim. It says Torim, Gedolim v'Ketanim. Somehow in the word Torim, that means old. The Gemara will explain how. The opposite is also true. Bnei Yona Ketanim v'lo Gedolim. Bnei Yona means the young pigeons. They have to be young. Ketanim v'lo Gedolim. They have to be young and not old. Sheyachol v'lo dinu. I can make the following argument. If turtle doves, which are not acceptable young, but they're acceptable old, So then, b'nei Yonah kavachomer should be good old. Tamalomer b'nei Yonah ketanav lo gedolim. Again, Torim implies dafka old, and b'nei Yonah implies dafka young. So the Gemara says, "My Talmud, where do you see this? Where do you see that b'nei Yonah has to be young?" So Amar Rava l'shtame krav lichtav min b'nei hatorim b'nei Yonah. The Gemara explains, I'll tell you why. Because the birds are listed in the Torah many times, and they're always listed the same. Torim without a title, and b'nei Yonah, which means b'nei Yonah young. So if either was acceptable, the Torah would not specifically use this lashon every single time. The fact that the Torah constantly calls Torim, which are mature, and b'nei Yonah, which are young, tells you they have to be that age. Ema b'nei Yonah the kasar achmana. Now the Gemara just is like, wait a minute. I get that the Torah specifically says b'nei Yonah, which means they have to be young, but maybe Torah means that they could either be young or old. Ema b'nei Yonah de kasar achmana b'nei ketanim in gedolm lo Torim iboy gedolm laisi iboy ketanim laisi. Meaning, I get it. B'nei Yonah is definitely exclusive; they have to be young. But Torim just means turtle doves, so maybe they could be any age. So the Gemara says, Dumya de b'nei Yonah. It makes sense that the same way b'nei Yonah are a specific category, dafka young, not old. It makes sense that Torim is dafka old and not young, that the Torah is using a specific lashon. Torim, which is the mature lashon, b'nei Yonah, which is the young lashon, ma b'nei Yonah ketanim in gedolim lo, af Torim gedolim in ketanim lo. Okay. So Tan Rabbanon, now the Brisa is going to talk about, what about when a bird is in between stage? It's not young, not old. You might think that when they're in between, they're kosher, meaning that they're either, meaning that the in-between stage is either young or old, either one, and it'll definitely work for something, meaning if it's b'nei Yonah, if for a b'nei Yonah, it'll work if it's considered young, and if it's considered old, it'll work for a tur. B'nei Torim. Tamalomar min hatorim v'lo kol hatorim min b'nei Yonah v'lo kol b'nei Yonah prat l'tchilas atziyu shebezeh v'zeh pasel. This age is pasel for both. Once it hits that intermediary stage, it's pasel for both types of birds. Me'emas hatorim ksherim. When is it considered mature and it's kosher? Mishiyazivu. When the feathers become large, reddish, and shine like gold. Me'emas b'nei Yonah psulim. And when is it considered intermediary age? Mishiyatzivu, when they turn yellow. Okay. Just to finish up the daf, Tani Yaakov Karcha taught me Emasai b'nei Yonah ksherim. When do pigeons become acceptable? Meaning, b'nei Yonah have to be young and not old, but they can't be an egg. They can't be a chick. They have to be a certain age where they're old enough. The day they're laid, the day they hatch out of the egg, they're too young. So when are they old enough that they're now roy for a carbon? So, Misha Yalu, when they reach the age of Yalu, what's Yalu? Because the pasuk says, Efrochav Yalu dam. Its young chicks swallow the blood. There's a connection between Yalu and blood. What does this mean? Emasai, Amar Abaya, Mechisham et Gadfa Minei Vasidama. When you pull a feather out and it begins to bleed. Apparently that's a stage of development. That's when they're now roy for a carbon. And they continue being roy for a carbon until they develop yellow feathers. Boy, Reb Zeira ha'omer. Here's the shaila. If a person says, Harei alai oila min atayrim oy b'nei Yonah. If a person says, I'm going to bring a carbon either from Tayrim b'nei Yonah, I get to decide later. And what does he do? He brings two carbonos, he brings two birds, a tar and a b'nei Yonah, but he brings them both in the intermediary stage. The question is, what's the halacha? Do we say the intermediary stage is like a new bria? It's not young, it's not old, it's a new category, and therefore he's not yoytze his carbon, because he didn't bring b'nei Yonah or a tur. Or do you say, no, it's a suffix? So therefore, if you were to just bring one carbon, suffix not good. If you were to just bring the other carbon, suffix not good. But over here, because you brought both, I brought a tur and a b'nei Yonah, and it's a suffix, so mimanashachem yotza. Meaning, if you just brought one, right, it's a suffix. So if you just brought one b'nei Yonah that was at the intermediary stage, it wouldn't be yotza because it's just one. It's a suffix. If you were to just brought a tur and the intermediary stage, it wouldn't be yotza because again it's a suffix. But here I brought both. So mimanashachem should be yotza if it's a suffix. Tzveika have a v'nafik, a dilma beria have a v'loy nafik. So Amar Rava Tashema. The Brisa says it's clearly prat l'tchilas atziv shebezeh v'shebezeh pasel. The Brisa specifically says that the Torah is signaling, the Torah says min b'nei Yonah and min hatorim, that this stage is no good. Now, if this is a new bria b'fnei atzmai, I get why the Torah would address it. But if it's a suffix, and the reason why you're not yotze is just because we're not sure, Torah does not deal with sveikas. The Torah does not address sveikas. So says the Gemara, yeah, maybe Shalom Bir have a shop, really, I'm a sveika have it. It's a krolim into sveika. The Torah does not address sveikas. So the Gemara says, you know what the answer is? Really, the truth is, it is a suffix. And it's not addressed by the Torah. The Torah does not. It's also because it's a suffix d'oraisa, but the Torah doesn't talk about it. Doesn't the Torah say min b'nei Yonah min Torim, which we said is excluding that? The answer is no. Really, the Torah is not excluding that case. That's a suffix. The Torah is excluding something else. Ki yitzakra, the Torah is really b'may l'mutei nirva v'nevad, a case where a bird was sodomized or worshipped as avodah zarah. The pasuk is telling me that you can't bring it as a carbon. So the question is, why would I think you could bring it as a carbon? So I'll say it outside. We'll see it inside. I'll tell you why. Because the pasuk equates avodah zarah and nevad in the same pasuk as a mum. Birds do not have a blemish of a mum. You're allowed to have a mum as a bird carbon as long as it's not missing a limb. Animals cannot have mumin. Birds can have mumin. So you might think that because it can have mumin, you might be allowed to bring a bird that's nevad, or a bird that is nevad, or a bird that was sodomized. Kamash Malan, no. The pasuk is excluding it, but the pasuk was never addressing that intermediary stage. Sal Kedai Techamina. The pasuk says their corruption is a blemish. The pasuk calls it a blemish. And what is it? Mushchas. What's mushchas? Mushchas is referring to a bird that was a psul of a carbon that's sodomy or avodah zarah, and it says it's a mum. Now, how do I know that Dvar Erva and Avodah Zarah is called Mushchas? Dvar Erva d'chsiv ki yeshchis kol basar zdakal aretz. Avodah Zarah d'chsiv pen tashchisim v'asisim l'cham pesel. So therefore the pasuk calls it a mum. So you might think kol shamum poisel boy. Any carbon that is disqualified by a mum, Dvar Erva v'yizcham poisel boy. The whole she'ein a mum poisel boy ain't Dvar Erva v'yizcham poisel boy. Bahani oifus, and these birds, hoyel v'loy pasel b'lehu muma. There is no psul of a mum by a bird. Amar mar. Tamus v'zachrus b'behema and tamus zachrus b'oifus. Birds do not have to have are allowed to have a mum. So you might think that because a mum doesn't passel, they're also not passel if they have dvar erva and avodah zarah. Kamash malan. That's what the pasuk is excluding, but it's not excluding the intermediary stage that we thought before, because the intermediary stage is just a classic suffix d'oraisa, which the Torah does not address.